I decided last night that I will start liquidating the heifers, the big heifers that I have. I will start liquidating them. The whole thing about the cattle market, from what I have seen, is that the heifers, they don't sell real well at 800 pounds. Heifer really sells the best at around 650, 700. If they start going over 700, they don't sell real well. And I know that I have a great big old Charolais heifer in here somewhere, and I have another heifer in here that's got a small set of horns on her, and they're probably about 650 pounds. I got a black white face heifer in here somewhere who has a small set of horns on her, and she's probably about 650 pounds too. And so I'm gonna take a look at my herd, and I will start it's better to liquidate these heifers at about 650, 700. You don't really want to start going over about 7.25 on these heifers, from what I have seen. A heifer at 800 pounds will actually lose about 30 cents a pound than if you sell them at 700. From just what I have seen, heifers sell better at 700. And so I figure I will start selling, if I have a set of heifers, if I have a set of about 4 or 5 heifers that are about 650 pounds, I will go ahead and liquidate them. And so I will go ahead and get that done. And so this weekend, the big idea is that I got that lease property. I got to get it chopped up, and then I'll start taking animals to the animals to the lease property. And the whole thing about everything, what I got going on right now is that I am going to start pushing myself. But the thing about this is that I haven't really tested to see what I am capable of in about the last year. All right, I haven't really seen what I'm capable of. I haven't tried. I haven't split my chops open. The last time I really pushed myself was maybe about a year ago. All right, it was maybe about a year ago. I haven't really tried, and so I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen, but and when I take a look at it, and I'm just gonna be honest about it. This is something I actually want to talk about too. My income. The thing about my income is that I occupy this wonky space in the U.S. economy, where my income is zero. All right, I talk about this, the whole idea of a tax deduction. I don't have any income. I don't, this, it just is what it is. I've spoken about this, and when I talk about money, and it is what it is, and and at the end of the day, I tell you how to do it. I mean, I give away the information for free. But my income is actually zero. And I've spoken about this, the whole idea of if I were to legitimately take a look at how much money I generate a year, because you have to understand that I start these businesses, right? I start these businesses by myself. I can effectively start these businesses whenever I feel like it. Like, if you legitimately put me on a field in the middle of Central Texas by myself, right? If that was it. If I legitimately just stepped onto a field in the middle of Central Texas by myself, and you came back 6 months later and you just, I had $5,000, I would have started myself a cattle business very quickly. Right, I start these cattle businesses by myself, and you have to understand that there is a monetary value to starting a business. Right, there is a monetary value. But the whole thing about my income is that I'm in this wonky space in the U.S. economy where my income is zero. I don't have any income. Right, I talk about this, and I'm not encouraging tax evasion. I am not saying evade your taxes. I'm not tax evading. All right, but and I'm not tax evading. All right, and the whole thing about the legal tax situation, I'm not encouraging tax evasion, and I am not tax evading. All right, the whole thing about this is that the assets are tax deductible, and I talk about this. There are many ways to get tax deductions via your assets. Okay. And in terms of legitimately being good with money, if I were to find somebody who was legitimately good with money, They would need to, there would need to be some sort of a discussion about assets and tax benefits and positive returns on capital. If that did not, if there was nothing about assets, a tax strategy, and if there was no tax strategy, if there was no assets involved, if there were no assets involved, if there were no positive returns, and the person is not good with money. And I've spoken about this the whole time. I mean, there are a lot of instances where people will make millions of dollars and then lose everything, right? It happens all the time. There are people that make hundreds of millions of dollars and lose everything. All right, and in terms of actually being good with money, that's something completely different. All right, making an income, my income is zero. All right, I have no income. I have assets. My assets are tax deductible. I even leverage against my assets and purchase more assets. I have good quality assets. I choose my assets one at a time by myself. I have no income. All right, I have assets. My assets take care of everything. If I legitimately need money, I can leverage against my assets. I can borrow against my assets, or I can liquidate a part of my portfolio and then reinvest the capital. All right, that's the situation with my income. I don't have any income. I have $0 of income. If anything, my income is negative, because the amount, and the whole thing about my business is that this business utilizes substantially more capital. I put substantially more capital into my business than my living expenses. My living expenses are a fraction of my business investment. All right, my business, in terms of the overall, in terms of, like, if I were to take a look at all of the money that is involved, if I were to take a look at how much money I put into my business and then how much money I use to live my life comfortably, it could be like a 14-to-1. Or something like that, depending on whether I'm using leverage. If I'm not using leverage, it could be 7 to 8-to-1. So for every dollar that I make, for every $10 that I make, I use maybe $1. I maybe use $2, and then the rest of the money goes into my business. And the whole idea, and I've been talking about this in terms of, like, if I were going to speak about how much money do I believe I will generate this year, if I were to speak about that, how much money do I believe in terms of just straight cash? How much money do I believe I will come home with post-tax earnings? This is not pre-tax. This is post-tax. This is how much money do I believe I will end up with at the end of the year? You have to understand that because of the compounding effect, about 50% of my income will come in the last 3 months of the year. All right, about 50% of my income will be in the last 3 months of the year. And when I take a look at it, I believe that I will make somewhere around $350,000 and $500,000 this year. And I've already said this, I am on track to get that done. Right? I am on track to get that done. If anything changes, I will say so. All right, if anything changes, I will say something has changed. XYZ has happened, and because XYZ has happened, something has changed. I am on track to get everything done, and in all honesty, with the new lease property. But because I've already, the whole thing about this, it's already been 7 months. It's already been 7.5 months for the year, and I've already been stuck in a situation where I have done nothing for about a month but collect money, right? And that, sitting around and collecting money for a month has really just kind of slowed me down. And so, even with the lease property and me reinvesting my capital and growing my business at its maximum capacity, even then I may barely make $500,000 this year. I may barely make $500,000. But next year, my opportunity for growth will be drastically higher. It will be drastically higher. I would be willing to bet that I don't have any issues going to $1 million a year. But but the income is like this kind of like this, and I've already said money is kind of like this illusion thing. Money is kind of an illusion. I don't know how else to put it. Money is kind of like this smoke and mirrors magic trick. Because me, I have no income. I have none, zero. My income may even be negative. I have no income. I have assets. That's what I have. I don't have any income. All right, and I do that by, by purchasing tax deductible assets at their equitable evaluation, right? I purchase good assets, and when I purchase these assets, I purchase them at their appraisal values, and I do that with the intentions of appreciating the value of the asset profitably. And when I do that, I can grow my wealth tax-free. I have no income. I have zero income. All right, and in terms of the amount of money that I spend, in terms of just like spending money, it's a fraction. I don't spend hardly anything. All of my money goes into my business. All of it does. And then some. I actually probably invest about 150% of my income into my business. So I'm kind of in this wonky situation. Right, and but this is in terms of like if I were speaking to somebody, if I were speaking to somebody, and this is also why I say when somebody is good with money, money is kind of like this whatever thing. Money's kind of whatever. The whole idea is the discussion of assets. All right, the assets are more important. Assets are more important. All right, money's kind of like this fugazi thing. It's like this smoke and mirrors magic trick. If I legitimately, there is no reason for me to just pay myself a massive sum of money. Why would I do that? The money's not going to do anything. I'll have to pay a third of it in taxes, and it's not going to do anything. Why would I pay myself a bunch of money? There's no reason to, right? I would rather have my assets. I would rather have my investments. The money's not going to do anything. And if I legitimately feel like I need money, I can just pay myself more or whatever it may be. Use a credit card. Right? I mean, it does, and then pay for it at the end of the month. It doesn't matter. But, my income is zero. All right? I don't have income. All right? Like if you were to take a look at, there are, and I'm not the only person that does this. All right? There are a lot of people, and I think that this is like for whatever reason, the people like me in this category of the U.S. economy absolutely get just hated on, and I don't understand why. People like me get absolutely hated on, right? I created multi-millions of, like if you were to take a look at, like and I think that this is why. Because if you were to take a look at my monetary situation on a graph, and you were to take a look at it and you said, oh my God, over the last year, he generated about $3 or $4 million. All right. He started, this business really ramped up, and, he's producing this cash flow, and his net worth went from from practically zero to $4 million in like a year. And then you took a look at that and you say, oh my God, well, his net worth is like this, and he's not paying any taxes, right? For whatever reason, the people in this segment of the economy just get absolutely hated on. And I whatever. And I will show you my perspective. I will show you what I see, because I've already spoken about this. The whole idea, if I were to pay taxes, if I were required to pay taxes, let's say I was required, 100% required to pay 33% of my income in taxes. I had to do it no matter what, right? I don't get tax breaks anymore. I have to, pay taxes. Do you know what I would have to do that? I would have to sell 33% of my animals. Right, and I've spoken about this. The whole idea of, are you poor people think like poor people, right? And poor people think like poor people. And the whole idea of the tax situation is that taxes are not a punishment. Taxes are there for people, to push people to reinvest their capital and deposit into societally positive things, right? To benefit society, right? If I were to pay taxes, I would have to sell 33% of my animals every year just to pay taxes. Are you sure you want that? Because I've even, because, now we are talking about reducing, the whole thing about it, and think about it in terms of a broader picture. Imagine that you were to find whatever, right? And we were to do this across the entire U.S. economy. Do you know what would happen? right? I mean, the factories would shut down, the hospitals would shut down, the farms would shut down. People would be forced to liquidate their assets to pay taxes. That's not a, it would turn into America would turn into a third world country almost overnight. All right, you cannot force rich people to pay taxes. That's not how it works. And at the end of the day, the whole thing about this is that everybody has the same opportunity as me. Granted that you live in America. If you live in America, you have access to the exact same situation as me. If you wanted to go out and purchase yourself a tax deductible asset and find yourself an accountant and just give your accountant the receipts and show him the receipts and here you go, right? If you wanted to do that and have the accountant plug it into their little computer and they will tell you what your tax situation is. If you wanted to do that, you can do that too. That's what I do, right? That's what I do. All right, I purchase my assets and these assets are tax deductible. So I have this, I'm in like this wonky situation, right? And here's the thing, my income is actually going to skyrocket upwards, all right? My income is going upwards and it is going upwards very quickly. I don't know what's going to happen. I have, when I start to push myself, like when I really start to get after it, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't. I may end up doing better than I thought. And just to put things in a realistic perspective, I don't think I will have any issues making $2 million a year. I don't think I will have any issues at all. Zero, none. Making $2 million a year, I don't think I will have any problems doing that. Zero. All right, I may be, maybe even able to push past that much faster. I may be even able to push past that, exponentially. All right, I would reasonably anticipate that my income for this year is going to end maybe a little bit over $500,000, but my income is zero. All right, my income is zero. All right, if we were going to talk about how much money do I make, we would also have to consider the reality of me starting my own businesses. All right, because when I start a business, and it's not just my business, it's any business. If you start a business and that business is profitable, that business has an equitable evaluation that is a multiple of the money that the business makes. And my business makes a lot of money and my business has a lot of good assets on the balance sheet. All right, my assets are pristine. I have pristine collateral. My assets are pristine. I legitimately go to the sale barn by myself and choose these animals one at a time. And I purchase commodity animals at a commodity price and I raise them to a commercial standard. My assets are pristine. Right? My assets are pristine. All right, I have a pristine balance sheet and my cash flow in terms of the amount of money that I generate, it is very high. I am very profitable, extremely profitable, right? And I start these businesses by myself and if I had nothing, I can just start myself another one. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. That's my financial situation. And if we were to take this all into consideration, which we would have to because money is not an opinion, I don't even know how much money I make, but my income is zero. My income is zero in terms of like it is what it is. My income is zero. I don't have any income. I have assets. All right, I have assets. I don't have any income. All right, this whole thing. Oh my God, hundreds of thousands. There are plenty of people that make whatever hundreds of millions of dollars and lose everything. The golden indicator of whether or not somebody is actually good with money is, can they take money and make more money with it? That's it. If you do something else, if you play basketball and you make a lot of money, if you play soccer and you make a lot of money, then you're good at playing basketball and you're good at playing soccer. If you are a musician or whatever, then you're a musician. All right, if you're good at marketing, then you're good at marketing. Being good with money is something that is completely different. All right, there are plenty of people that make large amounts of money, but being good with money is something that is completely different. All right, and the whole idea, and even me, like I actually know how to do this, and I am very good with money. I am extremely good with it, like to a point where it's like a 0.000000001%. I fundamentally understand how to utilize capital in such a way that will grow the capital, and I can do it with a 100% guarantee. All right, and I actually compound my earnings by more than 10% a month. I do this intentionally. I can actually grow money. That's something that is completely different. All right, being good with money and making a large income are two completely separate things. And just to put things in perspective, just to put things in reality, reality, it is what it is. My income is zero. My income may even be negative. All right, I don't have income. I have assets. My assets take care of everything. If I legitimately need some money or whatever, then I can just go and pay myself the money. Being good with money and making a large income are two completely separate things. And the whole thing, and just to put things in perspective, me, I am very good with money. And I will, and just to show you what I see, what does it look like to be very good with money? If I had $5,000, I could turn that $5,000 into $100,000 with a 100% guarantee, and it would take me less than 2 years. It may even take me less than 15 months. That's what it looks like when you're very good with money. If you're good at playing soccer, then you're good at playing soccer. If you make millions of dollars playing football, then you make millions of dollars playing football. If you make millions of dollars a year as a musician, then you make millions of dollars a year as a musician. Being good with money and being a football player or being a soccer player or being whatever, right, something else like that, are two completely separate things. There are lots of ways to make money, and I'm not saying, just that stuff, and then you got the, CEOs, right? You got CEOs of massive companies, right? You have people like that too. I'm not exactly sure, who's in the, make like legitimately make a, $3-4 million a year category. I don't know. I don't know who's in that category. But in terms of like a legitimate, like it is what it is, in terms of how much money I generate a year, and if you take a look at the reality that I create these businesses by myself, and my businesses are extremely profitable, and I have pristine assets on my balance sheet. When you consider that, and my cash flow is, I'm extremely profitable. Nothing here costs me anything. Nothing costs me anything. Everything makes me money. Everything makes me money. Nothing costs me anything. My income is zero. I don't have any income. I have a bunch of assets, and my assets take care of everything. All right, and I don't even know how much money I generated. I don't know. I know that I don't worry about money. I don't worry about money. All of this costs me nothing. Everything makes me money. But being good with money and whatever, being good at marketing, being good at playing a sport, being good at a musical instrument, right? Even, all of that, it's all different. All right, that's different stuff. In terms of just flat out being good with money, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about like, being good enough with money. And here's the thing. Like, if you were to find somebody who was investing in whatever, single family homes, and you took a look at their balance sheet and their cash flow and everything, in terms of I don't know how else to put it. The most realistic way for me to put it is that, that is the most realistic way for me to put it, is that if I had $5,000, I can turn $5,000 into $100,000 by starting myself a cattle business by myself, and I would do that with a 100% guarantee. And it would take me less than 15 months. I would 100% guarantee it. If it took me a long time, maybe 18 months, maybe. It's going to take me less than 2 years. And I would continue to compound the money forward. All right, I don't, but that's the amount of money that I'm talking about. And in terms of like, if you were to take a look at my business today, and you were to take a look at what I got going on today, right this moment, what am I working on and how much money is it going to make me? If I were to take a look at it from an objective lens as of right this moment, it's going to be about $500,000. But my income is zero. All right, I will take all of the money. I will invest it into a tax deductible asset, and then I will continue to compound growth the asset. I will continue to grow the asset. All right, I have no income. My income is zero. All right, my income is zero. All right, I have assets. I don't have income. I have assets. When you have good assets, you don't need an income. My assets are pristine. Right, my assets are pristine. I have very, 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 very high quality assets. I have commodity animals that I have paid commodity prices for, and I have raised them to a commercial standard. These assets are pristine. My business is very profitable. I don't need income. My assets will take care of everything. I don't need an income. I don't need an income. Nothing here costs me anything. Everything makes me money. That's what it looks like. But being good with money is very rare. It's very rare. A lot of people will bankrupt themselves. Even when they have $250 million, they will bankrupt themselves. There are many people who make hundreds of millions of dollars and completely bankrupt themselves. There are people that make billions of dollars and completely bankrupt themselves, right? It happens all the time. There are people that make $50 and bankrupt themselves. A majority of people probably can't even make $100 without bankrupting themselves, right? Most people can't even do that. I mean, being good with money is something that is completely different. I see money differently. If I had $5,000, what can I do with that $5,000? Well, I would go to the bank and I would take a loan for another $5,000. I would leverage my capital 1-to-1. Now I have 10 grand. What can I realistically do with $10,000? Well, I can buy 9 or 10 cattle. I can buy about a tonnage or a tonnage and a half of fertilizer. I can get myself a lease property. I can buy myself whatever medication that I need. I can whatever, and then I can just utilize the assets to grow the money. It's very simple, right? It's not complicated. But there are people that legitimately make hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and bankrupt themselves. Being good with money is something that is completely different. And for me, when I see it, the golden indicator of somebody being good with money is that they have a realistic strategy for how to utilize their capital to obtain tax deductible assets. When they speak about their assets, they talk about tax deductions, right? Depreciation of a building. I took an interest-only loan so I can deduct the interest, the cost of the interest. I took an interest-only loan for this building, and I put a 20% down payment on it. And I bought this building because I believe that one of these spaces are empty, right? I have an empty tenant space, and I will fill the tenant space, and I got the building at a reduced price because of the empty tenant space, and I put a 20% down payment on it, and I took an interest-only loan. The interest on the loan is tax deductible, and when I fill the tenant space, it will increase the value of the building, and the increase of and the bank will give me 80% of the money, and I put a 20% down payment on it. So when the increase of the building happens, it will proportionally increase my holdings in the building, right? It needs to be something like that. Something like that, okay? That's a realistic idea of somebody who is actually good with money. All right, I found this building, and the owner had not raised the rent in 5 years. The owners have not raised the rent in 5 years. The building is kind of run down, and it has an 85% occupancy rate. It has an 85% occupancy, and I'm going to put 20% down on this thing, and then utilize the rest of my capital to fix up the building and fill up the occupancies, and then I'm going to raise the rent of the building. It needs to be something like that. Now I have the depreciation of the building as a tax deduction, and I have the cost of remodeling as a tax deduction. And when I remodel the building and I fill out I fill up the occupancies, and the value of the building will go up. It needs to be something like that. Oh, I purchased this stock. I purchased this stock, and I purchased this stock because I took a look at the balance sheet of the company, and the company is doing very well. Right, the company has a bunch of pristine assets, and the company is doing very well, so I bought stock in this company. and I purchased it because the company, the evaluation of the company is low in terms of its future earnings, and I believe the company has a good product like Geico, right? I talked about the whole idea about Geico. That's what Warren Buffett's, one of Warren Buffett's biggest initial investments was in Geico. That's one of the things that he says that really changed his life, was investing in Geico. And the reason that he invested in Geico was because he was going through these businesses and he was taking a look at the revenue, and he took a look at Geico's, and the revenue of the business had gone from like $16,000 to $35,000 a year. And he took a look at the company. He said the company was good, and the future outlook of automobiles was probably good, and everybody was going to need car insurance. And so he invested in Geico, and that made him a drastic sum of money. Warren Buffett still holds a major stake in Geico. Something like that. It needs to be something like that. If it's not something like that, then you don't, the person's not good with money. They may be good at something else, but they're not good with money. All right, if you're not looking at an asset and determining the future value of the asset, and is the asset at a reasonable price as of today, and et cetera, if you're not doing that, if you're not evaluating assets, you're probably not good with money. All right, that's the golden indicator. All right, you can be good at something else, but you're probably not good with money. And in terms of legitimately being good with money, like phenomenally good with money, and it just is what it is. I'm not bragging about it. I'm not boasting about it. I don't even know 5 people. It may be 5, and I am one of them. That's it. Legitimate. It's only it's less than 5, and I'm one of them. I'm sure that there are other people out there, but I don't know them. I haven't seen their interviews. I haven't I don't know them. All right, it's only about 5. Maybe it's definitely less than 10. All right, but that's the clear indicator that you have somebody that is good with money. You may be good at networking, right? You may be good at marketing. You may be good at playing a sport. You may be good at something else, but you're not good with money unless, from what I have seen, unless you are able to understand an asset and how to grow your capital with the asset. That's the only indicator that, from what I have seen, that you actually have somebody who is good with money. The only one. There are plenty of people that make hundreds of millions of dollars and lose everything. There are plenty of people that even if they have $5,000, they will not turn that $5,000 into $100,000. They won't do that. And that's what I do, right? We can talk about this in many different facets, all right? In terms of money, there are plenty of people that make billions. There are even people out there that made billions of dollars and lost every penny. There are people out there that made hundreds of millions of dollars and lost every penny. There are people out there that even when they have $5,000, they will not turn that $5,000 into $100,000. They won't even do that. And that's very easy. All right, in terms of being good with money, it's something that is completely different. All right, and in terms of legitimately being good with money, I am very good with money. I'm very good with it. I don't know how many people on the planet can legitimately turn $5,000 into $100,000 in less than 2 years with a 100% guarantee. I don't know anybody else other than me and, maybe Warren Buffett. All right, maybe there are a few other people, there are a few other people, but that's about it. It's not like 10% of the population of the earth. It's not even 0.01%. All right, it's not even 0.00001%. It's closer. It's a borderline 0%. Like how many? Like if you legitimately walked around, and you gave this deal to everybody, and how many people do you think you would be able to find that can legitimately 100% guarantee turn $5,000 into $100,000 in less than 2 years? How many people do you think you could find? It's not going to be very many. It's not going to be very many. It's borderline going to be 0%. All right, and I'm one of them. That's what it looks like to be good with money. Being good with money is something that is completely different. It's something completely different. All right, you may be a social butterfly, right? You may be whatever, right? You may be a phenomenal athlete. You may be a musician, right? But in terms of making money farming, in terms of legitimately farming and making a massive quantity of money, I'm probably about as good as it gets. All right, when it comes to making a massive sum of money farming, I'm the guy. All right, I'm probably about as good as it gets. Even if I had nothing, I could just start myself another cattle business, and I would guarantee that I can turn that 5 grand into 100 grand. And if, for whatever reason, if I lost the 5 grand, I would just make another 5 grand and restart and try again. Am I going to lose all 5 grand? No, I'm not going to lose all 5 grand. That would be like me going to the sale barn and buying 5 animals and having all 5 animals die instantaneously. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. All right, I would 100% guarantee it. When it comes to making money farming, and when it comes to farming, I may legitimately be the best in the world at it. My income is zero, all right? And I'm very good with money as well. When it comes to farming, I'm very good at it. When it comes to money, I'm very good at it. There are things that I'm not good at. I'm sure I'm not good at a lot of things. All right, I'm sure that the list goes on and on. I'm sure there are many things that I'm not good at, right? Math. All right, whatever else it may be. Social skills, I don't know. Social, what is that even? I mean, if the average person wasn't a complete idiot, then I would have, better, social skills. I mean, what's social skills? I mean, you would be surprised by the kind of stuff that I see. All right, and I'm not saying this to be a horrible, malicious person. All right, people try and steal, people try and scheme, people try and do anything. Desperation, I mean, it's borderline ridiculous. I fell out of heaven at 7 in my life's a magical journey, and it's like, well, then, have fun dying poor. All right, it's borderline incredible to me. All right, and at the end of the day, even if I had nothing, I guarantee it, even if I only had 5 grand, I could turn that 5 grand into 100 grand with a 100% guarantee. I would do it with a 100% guarantee, and it would take me less than 2 years. It might even take me less than 15 months. All right, it just is what it is. All right, I am very good with money, and I am very good at farming. All right, when it comes to farming, I may legitimately be one of the best in the world. When it comes to money, I am very good at it. Am I one of the best in the world? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But when it comes to farming, I may legitimately be one of the best in the world at it. Money, I would say, but here's the thing. Like, I think that I will have a clearer idea of how good I am with money when I start to push myself, because I haven't really pushed myself in about a year. And when I push myself and I see my results, then I will know. All right, I am looking to push myself. I'm looking to get everything rolling at ASAP, probably by this weekend, and I will start pushing myself. And when I push myself and I take a look at my results, that is when I will know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen when I push myself. I don't know. Where will I end up? I don't know. I would reasonably anticipate that I make over $1 million a year very, very easily. I may even make over 2 million. I may legitimately make over 2 million, and it might even be easy for me. But in all reality, my income is zero. All right, my income is zero. And the whole thing about this is, like, when I speak about my financial situation, it's whatever. I have, I understand that I am in a very, kind of a situation that almost nobody has ever seen. And for whatever reason, people like me in this segment of the economy get absolutely hated on by everybody. I don't understand why. All right, I show you how to do it. And a very realistic way to look at this is, if you were to tax people like me, if you were to require that people like me get taxed, you put a flat tax on everybody, no matter what, you have to pay it. If that were to happen, you would have to understand that I would have to liquidate my assets to pay taxes. And if we think about that on a broader scale, we are not talking about factories getting shut down, hospitals getting shut down, businesses en masse getting shut down. Are you sure that that is what you want? Do you want rich people? Do you want the people in this segment of the economy to be required to pay a tax? Are you sure about that? We would have a mass closure of businesses, right? And in terms of farming, the food would disappear. The hospitals would shut down. The businesses would close down. Are you sure you want that? Right? And I've already said, if you're poor, you think like that. There's a very realistic reason you think like that, because you're poor. All right, you think like a poor person. Are you sure that you want that? Do you want farms to close down? Do you want businesses to close down? Do you want the hospitals to close down? Are you sure that you want to require that rich people pay taxes? Are you sure you want that? Like, have you thought about what is going to happen if that happens? If the wealthy are required to pay taxes? Because, the wealthy would have to liquidate their assets to pay taxes. And now what are we talking about? Businesses shutting down, hospitals shutting down, factories shutting down. America will turn into a third world country overnight. All right, and whatever reason, I'm in like this segment of the U.S. economy that just absolutely gets hated on by people, and I want to give you my perspective about it. If I was required to pay taxes, if it was 100% required that I pay 10% of my money in taxes, 20% of my money in taxes, if that was 100% required of me, no matter what I did, I would have to pay that much money in taxes. I would have to force liquidate my assets to pay those taxes. The food would vanish. Is that something you're okay with? Now think about that in terms of the broader U.S. economy. Businesses would shut down, hospitals would shut down, the assets would vanish. Effectively, the world, the United States of America would become a third world country overnight. All right, and for whatever reason, people like me in this segment of the U.S. economy gets absolutely hated on, and I don't understand. And I am here to give you my perspective. How do I see it? All right, how do I see it? I start businesses by myself. At the end of the day, this is also one of the things. It's like, if you legitimately wanted to go out and start yourself a cattle business, nobody's stopping you. Nobody's stopping you. Let's see it. All right, go out and do it. Nobody's stopping you. If you legitimately want to go and start yourself a farm, if you legitimately think you're a farmer, then go and do it. Let's see it. All right, nobody's stopping you. Free country. You can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, if you have nothing to show for it and you have a bunch of opinions, congratulations. I would be willing to guarantee you're borderline homeless. I would be willing to guarantee it. You're borderline homeless, and it's borderline pathetic. All right, for whatever reason, it just is, and I'm here to give you my perspective. Because I'm in this this situation where it's like, I don't have to ever worry about money. Nothing that I have costs me anything. Everything makes me money. My income is zero. And and I have a bunch of assets, and I'm compounding my growth by about 10 or 15% a month. I make an astronomical sum of money. And my income is zero. All right, and my business is still growing. All right.